She's shorter though. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another in the series of Statin's quarterly press briefing. This edition is our first socially distanced press briefing as we seek to provide statistical indicators on what is happening in Jamaica. Today we'll be releasing the January 2020 labor force. We'll also be discussing the March 2020 consumer price index and the fourth quarter GDP for 2019. I will now invite our Director General, Ms. Carol Coy, to come and present to you the findings that we recently released. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in as the Director General expressed to today's digital press conference, where we will be highlighting the labor force, where we will be highlighting the January 2020 labor force and the results from the consumer price index, as well as the GDP for the fourth quarter of 2019. With regards to the GDP, total value added at constant prices for the Jamaican economy remained relatively unchanged in the fourth quarter of 2019, that is October to December, when compared to the same quarter of 2018. For the quarter under review, the services industries grew by 1.2%, while the goods producing industries declined by 3.7%. I will now provide a breakdown of the performance of the economy for the fourth quarter of 2019 relative to the fourth quarter of 2018. Growth was recorded in all 8 services industries. Value added for the hotels and restaurants industries increased by 3.7%, and this growth was influenced by the performance of the group's hotels and other short stay accommodation and restaurants, bars, and canteen. The electricity and water supply industry grew by 2.8% due to increases in both electricity consumption of 3% and water consumption up by 1.7%. The other industries that recorded growth were finance and services, up 3.3%, other services 1.4%, wholesale and retail trade, repairs, installation of machinery and equipment up by 0.7%, real estate, renting and business activities 0.7%, transport, storage and communication 0.5%, and producers of government services 0.2%. The decline in the goods producing industries was mainly attributed to the decline in mining and quarrying of 40.4% and construction by 1.9%. The mining and quarrying industry recorded, as we said, a decline of 40.4%. There were decreased production in both alumina and crude bauxite. In the fourth quarter of 2019, alumina production fell by 44.9%, while the production of crude bauxite declined by 0.5%. The fall in the production of bauxite and alumina was largely due to the closure of the Gisco Alpart refinery. With regards to construction, real value added for the construction industry decreased by 1.9%, influenced by a reduction in civil engineering activities as road rehabilitation works were nearing completion. However, there was growth in the building construction and building installation subgroups. When we look at the performance of the Jamaican economy during calendar year 2019, preliminary estimates showed that the economy grew by 0.9%. This was due to a 1.4% increase in the services industries, as all industries within this group recorded growth. However, the value added for the goods producing industries fell by 0.6%, influenced by the fall in mining and quarrying and construction industries. We will now move to the Consumer Price Index for March 2020. Statin reiterates that the CPI measures the movement of prices of consumer goods and services purchased by private households, and this is one of the most widely used statistics for measuring inflation. The reference period for the March CPI was March 2 to 7, 2020. The inflation rate for March went down by 0.3%. The main contributor to this decline was a 1.8% reduction in the index for housing, water and electricity, gas and other fuels. This was due to lower rates for electricity, which resulted in a 3.7% fall in the group electricity, gas and other fuels. However, the 1.7% increase in the group water supply and miscellaneous services related to dwelling as a result of higher water rates tempered the downward movement of the index for this division. The heaviest weighted division, food and non-alcoholic beverages, also recorded a decline in its index, falling by 0.2%. This was due to a fall in prices for some agricultural produce, such as carrot, lettuce, and tomato. This resulted in a 1.3% decrease in the overall index for the class vegetables and starchy foods. Increases were recorded in the following divisions: alcoholic beverages up by 0.3%, clothing and footwear up by 0.2%. Furnishings, household equipment, and routine household maintenance went up by 0.1%, due mainly to an increase in the heaviest weighted group in this division, goods and services for routine household maintenance, and this was largely influenced by higher prices for some durable items. And the division's health, restaurants and accommodation services, and miscellaneous goods and services each recorded an increase of 0.1%. However, the overall inflation rate was moderated by a 0.5% increase in the index for the transport division due to lower petrol prices. For the calendar year to date, the inflation rate was 0.7% and the point-to-point was 4.8%. The inflation rate for the fiscal year 2019-2020 was 4.8%. We will now move to the January 2020 labor force. In keeping with Statin's advanced release calendar, today we are releasing the findings from the January 2020 labor force survey. The quarterly labor force survey measures the number of persons employed, unemployed, and outside the labor force as at the reference week. The reference week for this survey was December 15 to 21, 2019. The labor force survey does not measure the number of jobs created. The labor force, which comprises employed and unemployed persons, was 1,369,500 persons. The employed labor force was 1,269,100 persons, an increase of 3% when compared to January 2019. There were 1,400 unemployed persons, a decline of 6.6%. The unemployment rate was 7.3%. The youth unemployment rate was 19%. Looking at the employed labor force, persons are considered to be employed if they are engaged in economic activities for at least 1 hour during the reference week. There were 690,300 employed males in January 2020. This was an increase of 16,800 males compared to January 2019. There were 578,800 employed females in January 2020, an increase of 19,600. Males accounted for 54.4% of the employed labor force and females 45.6%. When looking at the employed labor force by occupation group, the largest increase in employment was in the occupation group, service workers, and shop and market sales workers. There were 301,500 persons employed in this group, an increase of 22,700 persons, or 8.1%, when January 2020 is compared to January 2019. The group, professionals, senior officials, and technicians increased by 8,200. Females accounted for the largest share of the increase in employment within both occupational groups. In examining the employed labor force by industry, it shows that relative to January 2019, the largest increases were in wholesale and retail repair of motor vehicles and equipment, and in the real estate, renting, and business activities industries. In the wholesale and retail industry, there was an increase in employment of 12,600 persons, or 5%. The real estate, renting, and business activities had an increase of 8,900 persons, moving to 100,500. The industry groups mining and quarrying and other community social and personal service activities each decreased by 2,800 when January 2020 is compared to January 2019. The largest increase in male employment, 9,300, was in the wholesale and retail repair of motor vehicle and equipment industries. For females, the industry group real estate, renting, and business activities accounted for the largest increase of 5,400. Now we will look at unemployment. In January 2020, the number of unemployed persons was 10,400, a decrease 100,000, the unemployed persons was 100,400 persons, a decrease of 6.6% when compared to January 2019. The number of unemployed females was 57,000, a decline of 7,000 persons, while the number of unemployed males remained relatively unchanged. The unemployment rate for January 2020 was 7.3%, which was 0.7 percentage points lower than the rate of 8% in January 2019. In January 2020, the unemployment rate for females and males declined to 9% and 5.9% respectively. The unemployment rate for youth, that is aged 14 to 24 years, was 19%, a decrease of 2.8 percentage points when compared to the rate of 21.8% in January 2019. The unemployment rate for male youth declined by 0.4 percentage points to 17.5%, while the rate for female youth employment declined by 5.7 percentage points to 20.9%. The number of persons classified as being outside of the labor force was 717,000 in January 2020. This represented a decrease of 4% when compared to January 2019. I will now look at the impact of the novel coronavirus COVID-19 on the statistical work programs of Statin. The operations of Statin, like other organizations, has been impacted by the spread of the COVID-19 and the measures adopted to contain its spread. The main impact has been on our ability to engage in primary data collection activities, specifically as it relates to the conduct of the Institute's regular household surveys. The programs that will be affected include our April 2020 Labor Force Survey. Data collection for the April 2020 Labor Force Survey was scheduled for 6 weeks, commencing April 1, 2020, and this was cancelled. The decision was taken in an effort to minimize the risks to our data collection staff and the households which with they interact. Therefore, labor market indicators for the labor force survey will not be available for April 2020. We are, however, exploring the possibility of adding a COVID-19 module in July 2020 labor force if circumstances allow us to undertake this survey. The 2020 survey of living conditions Data collection exercise was scheduled for June 2020, and this will be postponed as preparatory work has been affected by COVID-19. The Institute will, however, explore all options to have the successful execution of this survey in 2020. The effects of COVID-19 on the production of the statistical products has impacted not only Statin but other statistical offices across the region. Many NSOs across the Caribbean that were preparing to execute a population and housing census and other surveys this year have postponed those activities. The management of Statin will continue to review its internal operations to ascertain how best to align its activities with the government's directives and recommendations to minimize the impact of the disruption to our operations. I can also announce that there has been a national research agenda for COVID-19 and Statin's role in this. We all can agree that the current situation not only requires a whole of government response, but a whole of society response as we each play our part in the fight against a common enemy. Given how rapidly this situation is evolving and the demand for information, innovative solutions are required. In Jamaica, these solutions are being operationalized through a national research agenda for COVID-19. This national research agenda was initiated by the Ministry of Health and Wellness and is co-chaired by the Statistical Institute of Jamaica. This team includes a wide cross-section of stakeholders across government, academia, and the private sector. The main objective is to optimize resources to provide relevant and timely information for policy and decision-making during this challenging time. One of the initiatives is a telephone survey on the knowledge, attitudes, and practices of the Jamaican people concerning COVID-19. The main objective of this survey is to gain a better understanding of what Jamaicans know about COVID-19, along with their attitudes and practices with regards to the prevention and pandemic control activities. In closing, Statin thanks the respondents who continue to take time out of their busy schedules to participate in our household and business surveys. We reiterate the need for continuous participation in our surveys. We also thank the respective ministries, departments, and agencies for making administrative records available for compilation of statistics. The public can rest assured that the information provided is kept in the strictest confidence. We will continue to monitor the recommendations and guidelines established by the government and will adjust our operations accordingly. We are committed to keeping our staff safe as well as minimizing the risks to our respondents. We urge everyone to play their part in helping to contain the spread of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Coy. We will now take questions from the media. Before I begin to take the questions, let me just remind those participating via Zoom that you are required to keep your mic on mute unless speaking. Before asking your question, I'm asking you to identify yourselves and the media houses that you represent, and also to use the raise hand feature to indicate that you are interested in asking a question. Thank you. I'm not seeing the Zoom. Okay, I'm told we have a question from Douglas McIntosh. Could you go ahead?
Good morning. Have just a couple of questions here.
Please introduce yourself
firstly,
and the media host.
So I'm sorry, Jamaica Information Service. In relation to the COVID survey, what is it? When is this expected to get underway? And what is the duration for this undertaking?
Okay. Could you give me, if you have any other questions, I'll take them and then we'll respond.
Okay, the other relates to the national census, I think, which is scheduled for next year. How has COVID, how is Statin's preparations going in relation to leading up to that undertaking in light of the onset of the COVID-19?
Okay.
Those are my two questions for now.
All right. So I'll take the question about the COVID survey. I neglected to introduce myself at the start of the press conference. I'm Lisha Delati-Badir, the Deputy Director General of Statin. So with regards to the COVID survey, we are expecting to start that data collection within a couple of days. So we're looking at the latest Monday. And we are expecting to continue data collection for a period of around 4 weeks. We will do other publicity and PR around it to ensure that persons are aware of when the data collection process has started and the questions that we're asking, because we want to ensure that there's transparency in terms of the communication coming out of Statin. Regarding the census, Ms. Coy?
Okay, regarding Census 2021, Statin continues its preparations as if with the intention of having the census in 2021. However, because of COVID, there are certain issues that are affecting us. Our pilot, which we were hoping to go in the field in July 2020, might be impacted. We suspect it might be impacted by COVID. There are also issues, as we have been saying to most persons, we would be using tablet computers for the first time in the census. We have had issues already in trying to order tablets for our pilot survey, that there seemed to be an issue with the supply chain. So those are areas that will be that we think will impact our work. So we're still going ahead, planning for it, but we cannot say for certain that it will take place given what is happening with COVID-19.
Okay, our next question is from Chevon Campbell. Please introduce yourself and ask your questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Chevon Campbell, Nationwide News. 2 questions. Firstly, I heard that the labor force survey will be impacted, which would have been coming out in April. Is it will not be coming out at all, or will the actual release of that information be delayed? My second question, does this mean that the GDP for the first quarter, January to March, will actually be available on time?
All right, I think those 2 questions are for Ms. Coy, so I'll allow her to answer.
So data collection for the April labor force 2020 was cancelled, so there will be no information coming out of the labor force. What Statin is working with, and as part of that national research agenda, is to see if we can find other information to give an indicator as to what is happening in the labor market. One of the drawbacks of this is I think it will be focusing mainly on the formal sector of the economy. So the information that we can get access to will have information on what is happening in the formal. In the informal, it's going to be difficult to get data out of administrative sources on this, because a significant portion of them are outside of the government database. So these are some of the areas that will impact. But we are trying within this research to see how we can provide Jamaicans with an idea of what is happening on the employment side. With regards to the GDP for January to March 2020, this is due at the end of June. It's due at the end of June. Our plans are to still have this out. It might be, say, a few days late, given the issue of staff. We have issues of staff working from home and some of them and getting access. But we think we are planning to have the GDP. The information we have can provide that data. So that will be coming out in June or the first week in July, which is usually our latest in producing this data.
Thank you so much, Ms. Coy. I'm told Douglas has another question.
Yes, follow-up regarding the COVID survey. What will the information garnered be used for specifically? Just clarify that for me, please.
Okay. So the information coming out of the COVID survey will inform government response to what is happening. So the Ministry of Health and Wellness has asked us to assist them in gaining some understanding of what Jamaicans know about the COVID-19 and how we are responding as a people. This will inform their public health response. It will also inform their messaging in terms of how they communicate to Jamaicans to see whether or not it is being effective, if persons are practicing social distancing, if persons are changing their behavior in any way, shape, or form because of COVID-19. So that is the main objective of this survey, to understand what persons know about COVID-19, what are our attitudes towards COVID-19, and what are the practices that we have with regards to COVID-19. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, so I'm told Karina Douglas has a question. Bennett, Karina Bennett, okay. Please go ahead. Ms. Bennett? Okay, so I'm told we're having some technical difficulties with hearing Ms. Bennett, so we're asking her to type her question. So let's just give her a moment to put that together for us. Oh, okay. In the meantime, while we wait on Ms. Bennett's question, we would just like to advise the public, as we have told you before, that this March CPI was the last one on the old basket. So effective April 2020, we will be releasing the CPI on the new basket, which was based on the 2017 Household Expenditure Survey. So just to remind the public that as of April 2020 CPI will be on a new basket. And as we had already indicated, that CPI will be released at the end of May and not on the 15th of May as typically. So just to remind everyone that the new CPI will be on the April CPI will be on the new basket, and that will be released at the end of May as opposed to the 15th of the month. Do we have Ms. Bennett's question? No? Okay. Is there anyone else? Okay. All right. So if there are other questions, please feel free to email us. As usual, Statin invites discussion around the numbers. We invite you to send your questions to our communications team, and we will ensure that we answer them in a timely manner. Thank you again for participating as we continue to provide statistics to inform the nation. Thank you. She's shorter.